Well, we are here for the second segment of Healing Conference, and I trust you would have enjoyed the morning's experience, and I hope you will be able to say the same about this afternoon. This afternoon, our panel discussion will focus on the impact of COVID-19 in the education sector here in Jamaica, and particularly in the lives of stakeholders. To put this scenario in context, we remember that the first case of COVID-19 appeared in March 2020 here in Jamaica. Schools were suspended in March 2020, and this was then extended over subsequent months. In Jamaica, research shows that over 500,000 school-age students up to secondary school level were affected by COVID-19. Of these, 941 were females, and 678 were males. Since January 2022, face-to-face has resumed after several interruptions over the 2+ years. Stakeholders in the education sector have had to adjust to many challenges and are now dealing with going back to a sense of normalcy. Present with us this afternoon are stakeholders in the education system: a principal, a parent, a tertiary student, and a bursar in a school. Before we begin, however, let me apologize for the absence of Reverend Dr. Lester Shields owing to illness. We are praying for his healing and speedy recovery. For ease of conversation, we will be using first names in our discussion, so I will now ask each person to introduce him or herself and state how the onset of COVID-19 affected them in 2020 in their personal life, work life, and family life. We will begin with the principal among us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Sutherland. I am a principal, as you've heard before. When COVID started, or when we were made aware of COVID, it somehow it happened during my time of leave. I was on 8 months leave from the education system, and I became very nervous. I was worried for my students. I was very worried for my teachers because of the type of students that the school facilitates. We know that if people didn't have the means to earn a living, that there was going to be some serious problems. The earlier part of the lockdown, the pandemic, didn't go so well for my students, because at that time everybody started to worry about how are we going to reach the children. There was not enough means. There was not enough students who had access to the use of technology. And as I said, I was on leave, so there's not much I could do. But I did I did try to help in terms of giving some advice to the person who was acting. And as soon as my leave was up, I was in office because a few of us were allowed to come into office. And then it was there that I realized that many of the students were literally suffering because they had no food. That impacted me a great deal because these children are like my own. If they hurt, I hurt. So it tested my faith because I started to ask God, why this? Why no? When, you know, why did it come to Jamaica? Why did it have to come here? And it was just not really a good thing. Well, it wasn't a good thing, but it was very testing for me and my belief at the time. But I think that was a little distraction at one point, and I started to regain faith in that. I know that everything in life won't be always good. There are always going to be time when we have our trials, and that's what I remembered. And I started to think that we're going to get out of this, and we're going to get out of this very soon. But after telling myself that, I started to get a lot of help for my most needy students. People from overseas started to contact the institution and sending help to us, and that somewhat relieved the burden that I felt, because I really wanted to do as much as I could to help my students and their parents.
Thank you so much, Michael. We will now ask our parent on the panel to introduce herself and to share similarly.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here representing as a parent. COVID actually came to Jamaica at an interesting time for me because I was transitioning jobs. I had resigned the job I was at, and I was looking to branch out into freelancing. And then 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after that resignation, after my last day, we got the first case of COVID here. So it just kind of set things into flux, but at the same time, I wasn't working. I wasn't really affected career-wise. At the time, my children were 3 and 2, and they would have been in preschool, both in preschool at the time. So immediately we went into them being at home, me having to carry on working with them at home. Of course, at 2 and 3, they're not burdened with a syllabus that they will have to follow. You know, it's just us doing fun things together. But coming out of having been working since 20 years old, a full-time job, high intensity work, to being at home teaching kindergarten or preschool age kids was a tough transition. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And so that became my life for several months. And it was challenging, particularly because my husband is a medical doctor. He was working all the time. He had his own challenges, and we were worried because he's in a hospital all the time, and COVID patients coming and going. So that was also another worry. But I think I went through one of the most challenging times of my life. I was extremely lonely. At times I would be in the house for days with nobody to talk to. And I had my own mental and emotional issues through that. Not to be selfish, but it really did did put me into a bit of a depression. At the same time, though, I genuinely appreciated the fact that I had this time with my children. I'd often wondered, being a mom who works so much, what I was doing to my children, and I had a chance to be home with them all the time, to learn more about them. And I think that was a gift in many ways, because that's something that you can't really buy. So that happened. At about September, I was lucky because at preschool, preschool is not regulated by the Ministry of Education. So that's the Early Childhood Commission. My baby went back to preschool, and I willingly sent her because at this point now I was ready to get back out into the world of work and become a functional working mother again. So she went back to preschool. The older one, I enrolled her in what was one of two schools, probably in all of Jamaica, that was open. I think it was AISK and then Reach Academy where we sent her. So she was back at school at about the midway point of September. Prior to that, it would have been online learning, and I mean, they were pretty good with that. So we made our way there. So I'm lucky in that regard because she didn't miss out on those very important kindergarten years, or the very start of kindergarten years. And that was very important for us that we had the social element, even though it was altered, that social element, the interaction, and then the schooling on top of that. And I was able to get back out to work, which was good. And I ended up going to a job where they were very understanding. And even now we're still doing work from home. So I had the ability to balance a little bit. Of course, other challenges came my way, but I will say I made it out well. And just perseverance. My faith, I think, held me together because I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And little things along the way would pop up, whether it was this job at this place that wasn't going to be too demanding, too stressful, or it was the ability to send my bigger girl to a school that was face-to-face. So that was my COVID story, and I'm happy to say I survived and thrived. And just one little key element I'd like to mention: this job I went to, I was responsible for managing the process of procuring funds from the private sector to purchase devices to assist less fortunate children. And I was a liaison at the private sector organization in Jamaica where I work. And this was meaningful for me because I understood the impact. Even though I wasn't directly affected by it, I understood the impact, and I understood the importance of children being able to continue their learning, be it online, and that they had access to this. So blessings all the way around. Obviously, we're still in COVID somewhat, but I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones.
Okay, thank you so much, Anika. We now move on to our tertiary level student and ask her to introduce herself. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tina Cooper. I'm using two devices, by the way. I'm using one for the mic and another for the camera. So, my name is Taina, and I'm a tertiary student. So, COVID started when I was in upper sixth, and in March. So, in January, when I first heard about COVID-19, it was in China, and I said to myself, well, it's all the way in China, right? Just like how Ebola was in Africa and it never reached Jamaica, so I wasn't too worried about it. I know it was dangerous, but I wasn't worried, right? I wasn't worried. So when I heard that it was in Jamaica now, I started to panic. I started to worry, and it's dangerous and it kills a lot of people, and school starts school went on lockdown, and for the first week, I said, okay, I'm just going to use this time to rest and to just catch up back on myself because I've been extremely busy, and I'm having the hope that it would start back soon. So when I realized that, you know, school wasn't going to start back soon, I started to worry about my IAs that weren't completed and the exams that I was not prepared for, and I haven't started studying as yet. So, you know, it was just downhill from there. I just worry all day, and I didn't have any Wi-Fi. So when we would have lab classes, you know, I wasn't able to join. I had to, a couple days after, I had to ask my neighbor if I can get a use of her Wi-Fi. And so I joined the class, and it was really difficult for me to learn because the Zoom meeting was 45 minutes and the teacher was just rushing everything, and I wasn't getting anything at all because it cannot go through a lab in 45 minutes. And you know, and I'm a person that is used to going in, communicating with the teacher in person and getting it. So that was kind of a problem for me to complete my IAs, and I wasn't understanding anything. My mental state was not good. I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't faithful in the beginning. I did not have a lot of faith because of what was happening to me and, you know, my situation. And on top of that, I asked a teacher to sign me up for a CAPE subject that I was going to teach myself and do the IA by myself. So I was actually depending on the school's Wi-Fi to do my little research and download my little videos and watch them and practice. So that was what I planned to do. You know, I had to try and find something else. So when the school opened up, I think grade 11 and 6th form were allowed to go to school, and after the classes were finished, I had to leave the compound immediately. So I was planning to go to a teacher to ask him for help, to borrow books, anything at all I can do, to even sit on one of the benches and do a little research on the Wi-Fi before I leave. But I wasn't given the opportunity to do that. And I was just kind of lost, and I didn't have hope. I kept telling my family that I was gonna fail because there's no way I'm gonna pass, and the I's weren't finished. So, you know, I tried, and I asked around, get the numbers for teachers at different schools, and I asked them for information. I pressure them, and I got a little help from them. You know, we have to. Let me tell you about my experience with dealing with teachers. You have to really pressure them if you want something. You have to really pressure them for it. Worse, if you're not a student at their school, you have to consistently ask them for help and that was how I, you know, got the help for the subject, and I was able to pass. So in the beginning of 2020, it was really rough for me. Okay. My faith, it was at 0, and that was it, to be honest.
Thank you so much, Tahina. Very interesting story there, especially with your pressuring of the teachers. Next, we have another administrator in the education system, and she will now share her story.
Hi, afternoon. I'm Kathleen Bryan. I am a bursar, as you heard before. My video quality is not so good. But for me, when it started initially, COVID-19, what I had was, I was actually off-site studying face-to-face, and then COVID-19 came, and there it was. So there was no school. So we stopped classes. The Thursday evening, we were told in class at this location that no classes on Friday, and they would advise when we would resume. Coming back to work Monday morning was finding out that everywhere is locked down. So literally, it was just the administrative block that remained open. Principal, vice principal, myself, the assistant, and one worker to keep those spaces clean, because literally there was nobody else there. First, I don't panic easily. My life story has taken me through so much that my faith, I think, has been built through all of the struggles, and so I don't panic easily. What happened when we went into lockdown was work wasn't every day. So we'd go in 2 or 3 times a week to do the routine, the payroll, the filing of things that needed to be done, and the other days I spent in my garden getting back the relationship I have with God. I tell people, God and I have a relationship. When he wants to talk to me, he sends me to the garden and teaches me lessons there. So I started that, and that became like a ministry for me, because I kept sharing now plans with people who were at the same place, working people who had not done that in years and just really needed something more to keep them grounded. And so I began to share plans and share stories of faith, and that really helped me. So yes, COVID was difficult. The first mortality happened in our community, so it was scary. I should tell you that I'm a double open heart surgery survivor and a brain surgery survivor, so taking chances with COVID was a no-no. So all of that, but I did not panic. I think God had proven to me so many times that he can take care of me more than I could ever ask, that I did not panic.
Okay, thank you so much, Tatlin. So I would like to just ask the panel, and maybe Michael could answer this, because you had quite a number of persons looking over you. You had the students, you had the parents, you also had your staff. How did you find that response coming especially from your teachers, bearing in mind that you implied that your students were not able to easily access online schooling?
Well, my teachers were very, very, very supportive both to me, the pet, and the students. They would email things to me that I would copy for the children, and parents would come and pick up, which was the most you could do at that time. That's during the first stage of COVID. And then I would have to scan the responses when the parents return the information, send it back to the parent, send it back to the teacher, sorry, and they would send the results back. But work went on. We never stopped. We tried to get the children to be as comfortable as possible in this new normal. For example, the teachers would come in on a Friday to collect their books, just to let them feel a sense of school still happening. They would drop their books off. Teachers come in on Friday, pick them up, and mark them, grade them, leave them back at the school. Parents come and collect them on the Monday morning or whenever. But we try to keep things as normal as we possibly could, just for the sake of the sanity of the children. Right. Because I know some of them were going crazy, because they would call to say if they just can come on the school compound, just to feel a sense of normalcy, but they couldn't have them, not in the first instance anyway.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm listening to Anika, and I wanted to ask you, Anika, how did you cope with that social distancing? Because you made mention that you began to have a level of depression and, you know, missing being in touch with persons and stuff. How did you find yourself coping?
I think I just started to take the time to self-reflect. And somehow mentally I was able to think about how good I had it and be thankful for the things that, for the benefits that came out of being at home alone. And just basically play the trick on myself of, you know, it's not as bad as you think. Maybe you do need this time, maybe you do need this rest. When else are you going to be able to sit down with your children all the time? So I kind of was able to, again, as everybody on here said, or Tatlin specifically stood out to me, sometimes your life takes you through overcoming so many things that when you get to this one hurdle, you kind of have that innate confidence that you'll get over it because you've done it before. So it's not like this was my first challenging period in life. Nothing like this before, of course. But somehow I was able to just remind myself that I didn't have it the worst.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we are indeed seeing that in every situation, we can always look for a hopeful light. And to go back to Tahina, and she made mention of her high school experience coming to a end in 2020, and then getting her subjects. Tahina, could you say what happened after that? Did you go straight into university?
All right, so what happened after I finished my subjects? I was looking for a job. I wasn't planning on starting university anytime that year because I needed that time I needed to take a year off from school. So I just wanted to work. I wanted to save some money and support. So I did not get a job and I wasn't going to school. You know, I didn't get a call from anywhere. So I was jobless and I wasn't going to school. And that time, the depression really hit because I'm not used to staying inside, not going out anywhere, not doing anything. And I'm always used to getting up and, you know, doing something. But when I find out that, you know, I'm jobless, I start to wonder, what is my purpose? Do I have a purpose? You know, I started to question these things and it became so bad that, you know, I started to get up in 12 o'clock in the morning and I started to cry because it was really hard for me to stay in one place so long and not having any hope. So I have this blue Bible that they gave me at school and some emotions are at the front. If you're feeling depressed, what chapter you must go on and read. And I went in that Bible and one day I went in the bathroom, I sat down and I looked for what I'm feeling, depression. I'm feeling depressed. So I looked for that and I read the chapter and I started to pray and I started to ask God to take away this feeling from me. I started, you know, I was so serious and I started to cry and I said, God, I need this to go away. I need to have faith. I need this to go away. I need purpose. And when I finished praying, you know, all that feeling went away and that's how I know that God is the real. And if you want to know God, you have to go to Him yourself and experience Him. You have to go to Him yourself. That's all I can say. You have to seek Him for yourself if you really want to know about God. Because trust me, He's real. I love Him. He's good to me, and He's just amazing. And I just want to say that prayer works. Amen. Prayer works. I'm telling you from experience that prayer works, and I'm so happy. You know, I got my confidence, I got my faith, I got hope. The depression feeling went away, the spirit of fear went away, and I was just up and running. And I started to get up early in the morning. I started to jog and stuff like that. And then I got a call from Heart, and I started to do the apprenticeship program there. So it wasn't really any different because I went in. I didn't do it online. I went in, so it was just, it felt normal. Only thing, I had to wear the mask for the entire day. I'm not used to that. And that was my experience.
Oh, wonderful. And indeed, we can see where having your faith and trusting in God is evidenced with your story. Thank you so much. Now, I would ask Totlin to explain if there were any issues she had to wrestle with because of her prior medical condition.
Karen, for me, it was vaccine or not vaccine. Having done 2 open heart surgeries, and over time I've developed several allergies, inclusive of gluten allergy and drug allergies, and I think which is the part of the long-term use of warfarin sodium, which in some ways modifies your body. I still have not been vaccinated, largely because I have gone to get it done. Persons in Clarendon where I live will not administer it, so I went to UWI to get it done. And the day I went, I decided I would not take anything but the Johnson & Johnson 1 vaccine, and that would be it. Because, as I said, based on my allergy situation, I'm skeptical. With good reason. I have had drugs that have made me sicker than I needed to have been. So, for me, that is it. Still have not done it. I should have gone back, and then you will blow up again with staff getting COVID, and I've not been back there since. What I have done though is I have taken responsibility for what goes into my mouth. Largely, I ensure that I do my vitamins, my B vitamins, and if you are aware and you have done the studies, you recognize that zinc also helps to prevent viruses. So I like Deco Zinc, and I ensure that I take them daily. And alcohol in a spray bottle is always on me wherever you see me. I wear my masks. When people ask and they're uncomfortable in masks, I said, the doctors had to keep masks on for 11 hours to save my life. I have no issue in wearing a mask for 8 hours for the day. That's my reality. If they could have stood over me on an operating table in mask for in excess of 10 hours to save my life, the surgery was 10 hours, so they would have had it on for possibly 11 or more, then I have no reason not to wear it myself. Okay. So that's my take on it.
Okay, thank you so much for that insight, Totlin. And I just wanted to ask the question of any of the panelists here, because part of the COVID experience has been one where we experienced grief. You know, there were many loss of lives. How did you see that in your own environment, whether it be the loss of close family members, you know, teachers, staff, co-workers? How did that impact you? Did you have any experience with that? Maybe we could go back to Michael. Would this have been relevant to you?
Yes, actually, I lost a former co-worker who was very, very dear to me, and that sent me into a state of depression because I too caught COVID, and I thought I was going to go crazy, especially because I sing, and it affected my breathing really, really badly. So it was a moment of severe depression with the death of my colleague and having contracted COVID, because she had a respiratory illness, and with COVID I became I started having respiratory problems. So it was hard.
Yes, okay, thank you. Tahino, is there anything you would have to share on this area of how grief, if it impacted you in any way, in the death of anyone, family or loved ones, friends? Tahina seemed to be having some, oh, there you are.
Okay. I don't know anyone personally that died from COVID, but I have a grandmother that's very sickly. So we would try to be extra careful when we're going out, and what we do, we always have our masks on, what we do when we come in, what to do when we enter the house, and that was what we had to change.
Okay, so. Wonderful, thank you so much. And Aniko, did this impact you in any way with the situation of grief?
I also didn't know anybody who passed away from COVID directly. I actually lost my boss though during COVID, early part of last year. And for whatever reason, I spent a lot of time watching CNN, and the first thing they would do each night is announce the death toll. And that was traumatic for me. I really think that caused me quite a bit of trauma. And it was triggering also because I actually moved to New York right before 9/11, and it felt very eerily similar, the death toll, and hearing the death toll every night and climbing every night, and that didn't help, of course, my mental space.
Okay, thank you. Totlin, would you have anything to share on this in this area?
I think I lost friends that we knew, co-workers, because I have friends. I span not just education but health, in terms of the doctors and the personnel that I interact with. So there was a lot of death and dying and mourning and sorrow, and there were people that I would have met who helped me along the way. They weren't necessarily personal friends, but people who God put in your life to bless you, who would have died during this process. So yes, it caused me to sit and to reflect on how God can really use people to bless you and bless other people, and then they die. And it is part of living. We are born and then we die, but it is still painful, because death is really the one thing in life that we'll never ever be fully prepared for. And so yes, there was some amount of sorrow and sighing, but not loss of hope, because God is still good in the midst of the turmoil.
Amen. Amen. So at this time, panelists, we're going to just have a break where we'll ask the audience to questions that they have been posing, and then we will have you responding to those accordingly if they're targeted to you. Just bear with us, please.
Okay, hello. Simone here again. Question from Kemar Parchment to Michael. So we've heard that COVID has brought on its fair share of challenges in the school system, and in the context of our parent sharing, Aniko, she pointed out some positives coming out of COVID, spending more time with her children, etc. Was there any silver lining experience for you, Michael, in your area? any innovations, programs, partnerships that the school did not do before, but do now and will continue to do post-COVID?
Oh yes. It was during this time that we discovered that we have some boys who weren't all that great before, but in terms of performance, that they rose to the top of the school during this point, because we discovered then that they were introverts. They never wanted to be around others, and while they were online, they shone.
Yeah.
They did extremely well, and it was during this time too where the parents started to become very bored, and they wanted to start doing something. So I started a class online for them, which was it was excitement for them. They looked forward to every evening when we have class. So those were some really positive things for my institution.
Wonderful. So I'm seeing the learning styles coming out there. Students with different learning styles. Awesome. Okay, any other question, Ms. Simone?
Yes, another one from Kemar. Anika, did you see any negative developmental impact on your toddlers during this time of lockdown and so
on? I really can't say I did. No, nothing I observed. And I guess that's another thing to be grateful for. I think children can be so resilient, and you throw them in the deep end and they'll swim.
Yeah.
And it was no different with my children. I think they didn't know any different. They functioned in the environment they had with what they had, and they made the most of it. So thankfully, no, I didn't really see any negative developments at all.
Okay, and for Taina, how would you compare the experience of dealing with COVID in sixth form versus now being at a tertiary institution? Would you say that your high school has assisted you in any way to cope?
No, I don't think they have. And when COVID came, I was almost finished with school. I didn't really get the chance to experience face-to-face classes like that. But when I started university now, I got to know what the full experience of having face-to-face classes, and that was basically it. Online classes, I must say, I'm sorry. Having online classes.
Okay. And finally for Ms. Totlin from Ryan Clark, her bursa said that, her bursa was more about business as usual. How has your church life impacted your tasks in terms of where fee collection was concerned, bearing in mind that parents had lost their jobs and were working less hours?
Well, because I'm at a primary school, we collect what is called a maintenance fee, and that dropped almost to nothing, again, based on the economics of the persons that we serve. In terms of what we were able to do, though, in partnership with our New York chapter and myself working with the principal, we were able to get donations, and we were able to do food baskets to the most needy among us, and that was like almost 250 students that benefited. And when you look at that in proportion to over 500 students, have been almost a third of the population that we were able to impact in that way. It also changes, and finances is one, but how we spend became also another thing, because No longer was it paper, but no, it was getting access. So you're now paying for internet service to be better able to allow students to access. We're still in that process. We have gotten partnerships with different organizations too, who have come in and offered devices to our students that have allowed us to be better able to deliver to them. So those are some of the things that have come out.
Okay, thank you so much, my panelists. Now, one of the things about healing is that we need to have an idea, some strategies that we could employ in the healing process. And a big one normally is self-care. How do you think you did with self-care? Can you identify a particular area that you found that you began to improve on just to make sure you were well in mind, body, spirit?
So for me, I did particularly the end. One of the ways I try to take care of myself is to stay fit, to exercise, and I play tennis recreationally. And I think in the beginning, I was keeping up with something that I did with my children. And then the more down I got, the less I was able to pull myself out of it. But I think towards the end, when my children went back to school, I was able to pick back up. And that was my self-care, that 1.5 hour, a few days a week when I would do something physical, just to, get my mind right. That was my self-care.
Okay, thank you, Anika. Michael, anything to share there in terms of a self-care habit you may be heightened or you picked up for the first time during this period?
I am ashamed to say that I have not been looking after myself as much as others, and probably I need to learn now that I need to take care of number one.
Yes, definitely. That saying when we're in the aircraft that you put the oxygen over your own face first before you help others, we have to definitely pay attention to that.
That's true.
Tahina, do you have any self-care tips that you might have introduced in your life during this period?
Yes, I have. I started jogging early and in the evenings to keep myself fit. I started to make smoothies with fruits, and I use the sea moss gel. I learned the benefit of it and how it's good for the immune system. So I try to add it in everything that I'm eating. And I started having a closer relationship with God for my mind. And, it was just uphill from there.
Okay, wonderful.
So I worked on my mind. I worked on me mentally, spiritually, and physically.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Tahina. Tatlin, what about you?
For me, I limit what I take in, and that is what I hear. So I stopped watching television a long time ago. Anika, I see where you say you watched a lot of stuff that was depressing you. I choose what I watch, and I choose it carefully. I literally feed on things that feed my soul. For food, for exercise, yes, I do my gardening. My doctors have been killing me to walk. I walk sometimes, but when it gets too hot, it becomes too exhausting for me. And then I can't drink like you can always drink 8 glasses per day. So then I must manage carefully how I do whatever activity I'm going to do. So that's for me. My gardening has taken off so I can offer gifts to my friends. And my gardening is where I find peace. That's where God and I have a good thing going on.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, panelists. So as we wrap up this segment, and before we go into the next question and answer area, I just want to share with the participants some strategies as it concerns self-care. So we want to understand that self-care can be in 8 different ways. There is physical self-care, and this would include taking care of your physical health. Things like having adequate sleep and rest, walking and jogging, as you were hearing from some of our panelists, keeping your medical appointment, getting fresh air, and healthy food. There is also emotional self-care, and this is when you pay attention to your emotions, finding empathy and self-compassion and seeking to help when needed. Things you can do to help with this is stress management, self-compassion, counseling, and writing your journal, making journal entries. A third area is social self-care, and this has to do with healthy family and social relationships. This means you can spend time with others, and it doesn't have to be social. Thank the Lord for technology. We now have virtual space. You need to create healthy boundaries. You need also to be balancing alone time and social time. There is need to spend time by yourself. Positive social media, and asking for help when you need it. Certainly we have heard about this one, the fourth from all our panelists, and that's spiritual self-care. It means that you are going to have your religious and spiritual beliefs feeding you. So you need connectivity. You need to be in prayer or meditation. You need to spend time reflecting, attending worship services or groups from your church, and indeed allowing nature to speak to you. So the concept of gardening that Totlin speaks about is a very good source. Then there is personal self-care, and this one is specifically from Mr. Michael, right? Because we have to ensure that we look after ourselves. So you do this by engaging in your hobbies, treating yourself, taking yourself out, going somewhere nice that you enjoy, trying something new, getting to know yourself, and listening to your inner self when the Holy Spirit is speaking to you, I like to say. And then there's the aspect of your home environment self-care. Self-care that has to do with maintaining a safe, functional, and comfortable home environment. We do not function well in chaos. We also need to have safety, security, and stability. We need comfortable space and a healthy living environment. Let us not forget financial self-care. This has to do with maintaining your financial goals and obligations, money management and budgeting, saving, seeking help for information, having leisure money as well, being able to buy things to treat yourself, and paying your bills, very crucial. And finally, there is self-care as it concerns work or school, caregiving, or other responsibilities. And here you have to practice good time management, feeling productive and valued, learning and developing skills that you will need to help you or others. Healthy working boundaries and communication. And this is important, folks, because we do not want to constantly be overworking and overloading our plates. We need to make time for ourselves and to de-stress. So those are just some tips that we could use as it concerns self-care. And certainly I want to thank those who are here with us from the education sector, and we just want to thank you for your service, and that you will continue to trust in the Lord, and He will indeed keep us healthy, sane, and spiritually able. So I'll go back over to Simone as she identify any questions from our audience.
Okay. This is for Michael again. As a Christian educator, what role would you say that your Christian life played in how you led during the pandemic?
That's the most important role as an educator. It was during this period that I discovered that I needed to be closer to God, and that the time when churches were closed and we couldn't go in physically, it was then that I realized how much I personally needed the church, needed to be with my brothers and sisters of faith. It was really a time of serious prayer, and I really wanted to be in the physical space. So, and it was after everything opened up that I realized that, you know, I have not been doing enough. I have not been attending church, and I have not been participating as much as I should. So this pandemic experience has opened my eyes spiritually. I'm glad for the I'm glad that I'm able to do this, to be able to even take part in the church, in the work of the church, as I want now to be more involved in it.
Okay. And a question to all the panelists. COVID amplified some flaws in our education system. What improvements would you each like to see in the education sector? Anika, you may start.
Okay. I think education in our country needs to be more than what we learn in books. Teachers have very difficult jobs, but we have to ensure that we're teaching children life skills, survival skills. An educator had told me many years ago that the most important skill a child can learn is resilience. And I think we need to focus more on teaching our children how to function and thrive under tough conditions, and integrate that into the book learning, because it's all well and good to be able to pass your exams and such, but life is about a lot more than that. So I would like to see us bring more elements of life lessons into the education system.
Thank you. Tahina, would you want to share from that perspective, that same question?
Well, I totally agree with Anika. You know, everything she said was true, and if they would just pay more attention to the students, you know, it would be better for us to learn. You know, some students, what I heard someone say, you know what they experienced, haven't been in class for days, and no one was concerned about, him. And you know, he didn't get to learn, he didn't get to follow up with the syllabus and stuff like that. So he had to repeat that grade. So if they could just show a bit more care for the students who are seen absent, I think that would be a good improvement for the system.
Tatlin, would you want to comment on that from where you sit as a bursar?
To be honest, there is just so much lacking. Anika, I agree with you. There is such a disparity between what is written in a curriculum and what a teacher is expected to deliver, and the children suffer in the middle, because there is so much stress and pressure on a teacher to complete this task, and the children are not grasping the concepts. For various reasons, it's not made applicable. There is no lesson tied to it, no practical application tied to the delivery of the material, that makes it so difficult. And you see it because the children get frustrated and they get disruptive and they destroy things out of that. It's anger and it's frustration and nobody's listening. As you rightfully say, nobody listens to them. And everybody's trying to get them to fit into a box when they need to take off those boxes and start to design. And I think we have suffered as a nation because of this, because how things are designed, it kills the creativity of our young minds. Michael, in your position, I know you are being challenged as a principal to ensure that creativity never dies in your institution. Otherwise, we will all suffer because we will have no more leaders and no more persons here who can act independent and have independent thought that God can speak through, because it's as if we are creating robots by the system we now have. For me, there's so much that needs to change, really.
Thank you. Michael, would you like to wrap up that question with your response?
You know, I was just going to add to what well, not just that, but what Toplin said about the box. I believe in getting rid of the box altogether. Just getting rid of the box altogether. Another thing too is, I think some of our parents need training in parenting skills. And I will tell you why. Because we have a tendency to want we want a particular child, so we push them towards certain things, not thinking of how they feel about what we want them to do, and we don't want to hear from them what they want. And again, this is tying to what everyone has said. We need to listen more to the children. Sometimes they have some really, really good ideas, and what they say make better sense than what adults say too. And that's why I listen to my children here, because they help me to run my institution. Amen. I listen to them. I need to know what they want, and therefore I make better decisions in dealing with their needs.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Simone, next question.
Yes, this question is from Mrs. Candy Smith. With the recent spate of deaths of our teachers, how much of an impact do you think COVID played in the lives of these teachers? And how do you think the Education Ministry can support the schools to help the mental and physical health of our teachers?
Wow. Who would want to take that one on? Sir Michael?
I am not so sure if COVID is a factor in all of this, but it's hard to pinpoint just one thing as to what the ministry could do. For me, without sounding, I just wish I could do more for my school without the ministry's intervention. That is all I have to say.
Any other comment from any of the panelists? Okay. Any more questions, Ms. Simone?
I have a comment.
Okay, sure.
Sorry.
Thank you, Anika.
Right. We could go on for days about this. I am so passionate about our education system, but I think our teachers are frustrated and they're overworked and they're not being able to be efficient at their jobs because we just have students out of place. So the technical part of our education system has been completely eradicated. So we have students who really should be in technical schools, in traditional high schools, being forced to learn in a manner that they're not able to. And then that doesn't help the student, that doesn't help the teachers. They fall off the grid, they get left behind, they can't become functional human beings in our society. They have nothing to contribute because they're not being trained the way they need to. I mean, Michael, you and I could probably talk about this for days, but I think the Ministry of Education need to look at how we're kind of imposing what should happen as opposed to what children are capable of. Not everybody will be a doctor and a lawyer, and we need to accept that all professions matter, and they can be just as luxurious if we attach the importance to them.
Okay, thank you, Aniko. Any more response?
Yes, we
Final
have
one now.
Yeah, one final question for Taina. Rayan would like to know whether or not the lack or reduced social interactions had any effect on your academics, Taina.
Yes, it did. It had some negative effects. And I'm a person who is used to learning face to face, who's used to interacting with teachers in person. And I'm doing a more technical field, so I learn better when it's right in front of me and I can just interact with the teachers or lecturers.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So I want to thank our audience for those questions that they sent in to our panelists. And as we close, we just want to wish for everyone all the best. Remember the importance of self-care as we go about readjusting our lives to post-COVID. And let us remember that COVID is not always negative. We have seen where the use of technology has been very helpful, and we learned this because of COVID. So the reality is we have to look into our circumstances, look into our situations, always seek to find the best in it. As Christians, we need to remember that God is always in control. He's sovereign, so we need to lean more into Him. It's not about the religion, it's about the relationship, audience. And so thank you for joining us, and have an enjoyable rest of the afternoon as we prepare to close off today's activities. Thank you so much. Thank you, my panelists. And now we will have our